The Oprah interview with Prince Harry and Meghan Markle was supposed to be one of the defining moments of Oprah Winfrey's career. In one sense, it was, but not in the way she once might have imagined. Oprah's name had long been associated with major television moments, from the famous "You Get a Car" giveaway to interviews with some of the biggest figures in entertainment and public life. Yet in royal history, and increasingly in media history, the 2021 Sussex interview has become something else entirely. It has become a case study in what happens when celebrity television presents itself as truth-telling, when emotional claims are broadcast globally without enough challenge, and when a famous interviewer appears to confuse a dramatic scoop with proper scrutiny. Now, Oprah has revisited that interview during a Vanity Fair watch-along style conversation. And the most revealing part is not simply what she said. It is the discomfort behind what she said. For years, Oprah did not spend much time publicly dissecting that royal interview.
I wanted to be clear because was she silenced? Were people telling her not to talk? That's why I said that. I said it for clarification. I had said to them ahead of time, I'm gonna try to cover everything. This interview took 3.5 hours. And as is always the case for me, I want it to be a win-win for you.
She did not defend every moment in detail. She did not proudly point to it as a masterpiece of journalism. That silence was telling, because as the years have passed, many of the claims made by Harry and Meghan have been questioned, contradicted, softened, or reframed. The interview that once looked to some viewers like a brave revelation now looks to many critics like a carefully staged public relations operation that caused enormous damage to the royal family while leaving crucial questions unanswered. Oprah revealed that the interview had been postponed several times. She explained that it took place in Montecito, close to where both she and the Sussexes lived, and said that at the time she had been in a long period of pandemic isolation, describing herself as having barely left the house for hundreds of days. She also said the full sit-down lasted around 3.5 hours. According to Oprah, Harry and Meghan did not know the specific questions in advance, but she had told them ahead of time that she wanted to try to cover everything. Then came the line that critics have seized on. She said that, as always, she wanted it to be a win-win. That phrase matters. A serious journalistic interview is not meant to be a win-win for the interviewer and the subject. It is meant to be a search for truth. Sometimes that will be uncomfortable for the guests. Sometimes it will damage the guest's preferred narrative. Sometimes it will make the interviewer unpopular with people who expected a softer platform. But the purpose is not to make sure everyone leaves happy. The purpose is to test claims, clarify facts, push back where necessary, and make the audience better informed. When Oprah describes the interview as something she wanted to be a win for Harry and Meghan, and also a win for herself, critics hear a confession that this was not really journalism. They hear the language of public relations. That is the heart of the criticism. The interview was not a casual celebrity chat about a new project. It contained allegations and implications that went around the world. It touched on racism, mental health, security, royal titles, family estrangement, institutional neglect.
It's just right down the street from them. It's right down the street from me. This had been postponed probably 3 times because this was 2021. I was still in my crazy I can't leave the house period. So I didn't leave the house for 322 days. By the time we finally sat down, I think they were both ready. They didn't know, obviously, anything that I was going to ask them, but I had said to them ahead of time, I'm going to try to cover everything. This interview took 3.5 hours. And as is always the case for me, I want it to be a win-win for you.
And the future of the British monarchy. It aired while Prince Philip was unwell and nearing the end of his life. It placed a cloud over unnamed members of the royal family and left millions of viewers with the impression that the institution had behaved cruelly, perhaps even with racist intent. When the stakes are that high, a broadcaster has a responsibility to slow down, ask precise follow-ups, and make sure the audience understands exactly what is being alleged. The most famous example remains Meghan's claim that she had been silent or silenced. During the original interview, Meghan spoke about having long advocated for women to use their voices and then feeling that she had been silent. Oprah leaned forward and asked, "Were you silent or were you silenced?" Meghan answered, "The latter." It was a television moment designed to land with force, but it was also exactly the moment when a serious interviewer should have stopped and asked for specifics. Who silenced you? How were you silenced? Was there a written agreement? Was there a threat? Were you told by courtiers not to speak? Were you prevented from doing interviews? Were you unable to contact friends? Were you being asked to follow normal palace media protocol, or are you alleging something more sinister? Oprah now says she asked that question for clarification. She says she did not want the answer to be misunderstood later. But the problem is that the follow-up never came. If she genuinely wanted clarity, she needed to ask the obvious next questions. Instead, the audience was left with a powerful accusation and almost no detail. That is not clarification. That is dramatic framing. The gesture, the pause, the intensity of the question, and the emotional answer all created the impression of revelation, but the facts were left vague. Critics argue that this vagueness benefited Meghan because it allowed the allegation to carry maximum emotional weight while avoiding the burden of evidence. The same issue appeared around the claim involving Archie's title, security, and alleged conversations about skin color. Meghan said there were concerns and conversations about how dark Archie's skin might be before he was born.
I've always valued independence. I've always been outspoken, especially about women's rights. I mean, that's the sad irony of the last 4 years, is I've advocated for so long for women to use their voice. And then I was silent.
Were you silent or were you silenced?
The latter.
Okay.
She's
Very
embarrassed.
nice. I don't think I've done it since. I don't know where the hell that came from. Whoop. Okay. And I wanted to be clear because was she silenced? Were people telling her not to talk? That's why I said that. I said it for clarification because I didn't want later to hear, well, no, it wasn't that. It really was that I was silenced. They wouldn't let me talk. So it was all for clarification.
Bullshit, Oprah.
The way the story was presented allowed the public to believe that racism inside the royal family had affected decisions around the baby's title and security. Yet the details were confusing from the beginning. Who had the conversation? Was it one conversation or several? Was Meghan present? Was Harry the only person who heard it? Was it said with racist intent, ignorant curiosity, family awkwardness, or something else? Did it have any actual connection to title rules, which were governed by existing protocols around grandchildren and great-grandchildren of the monarch? These were not minor details, they were the whole story. Oprah did not force the issue. She did not ask Harry and Meghan to reconcile their versions in real time. She did not ask whether the conversation had any bearing on formal royal policy. She did not ask whether the couple were willing to exclude certain family members from suspicion if they were not prepared to name the person involved. The result was a blanket suspicion placed over the royal family. Viewers were invited to imagine the worst, while the people being implicitly accused had no way to respond because the allegation was unnamed and imprecise. That is one reason the palace's later phrase, "recollections may vary," became so effective. It suggested that the royal household knew the story was not as clean as the broadcast had made it appear. Harry's later interview with Tom Bradby complicated the matter even more. When Bradby asked about the racism accusation, Harry pushed back and said that Meghan had not called the family racist, suggesting that the British press had done that to critics. That was astonishing. The Sussexes had sat for an interview that left the world discussing racism in the royal family. They later accepted the Ripple of Hope Award from the Robert F. Kennedy Human Rights Organization, with the public framing around standing up against structural racism within the monarchy. Then Harry insisted that the couple had not used the word in the way the media claimed. That is exactly why Oprah's original failure to clarify matters. If the allegation was about unconscious bias, say that. If it was about racism, say that. If it was a painful but isolated family comment, say that.
That Oprah has now made of the way Prince Harry and Meghan Markle are dealing with life, I want to show you the key backtrack. And this is in regards to, and you know it's what went viral, you know it's what went around the world. Were you silenced or silenced? And Oprah is now trying to make this quite extraordinary argument. And I mean, I say extraordinary in the sense that it's totally not believable, that this action was designed to push Meghan Markle into whether she was actually telling the truth. Now, Oprah, love, you've done this job for a very long time. You don't do that.
But the interview allowed all possible interpretations to circulate, and the Sussexes benefited from the most explosive one. This is why so many critics believe Oprah's legacy is now tied to the interview in a way she may not have expected. The Michael Jackson interview was once one of the defining Oprah moments. The car giveaway became part of pop culture, but the Sussex interviews become a different kind of symbol. It represents the collision of celebrity friendship, emotional television, racial politics, royal resentment, and weak follow-up journalism. Oprah may not have intended to damage her reputation, but by giving Harry and Meghan a platform where their claims were not tested enough, she placed herself inside their story. As the Sussex narrative has become more contested, Oprah has had to carry some of the reputational burden with them. That is why her Vanity Fair reaction felt significant. She did not come across, at least to critics, as a person proudly revisiting a triumph. She seemed uncomfortable at moments. She admitted she had not repeated the famous "were you silent or silenced" style of questioning since. She appeared to want to explain why she had asked it. She talked about wanting clarity. But the explanation only reopened the central problem. If clarity was the goal, why did she not ask the clarifying questions that were sitting directly in front of her? According to Taz, who joined the discussion in the source material, Oprah is now trying to backpedal because the public mood around Harry and Meghan has changed so sharply. In 2021, much of the media and celebrity world treated the Sussexes as brave truth-tellers, taking on an outdated institution. They were supported by powerful names, amplified by sympathetic outlets, and protected by the cultural mood of the moment. But years later, the picture looks more complicated. Their stories have shifted. Their projects have struggled. Their popularity in Britain has fallen. Their public complaints about privacy often sit awkwardly beside their appetite for media exposure. And their claims about the royal family no longer land with the same automatic force. Taz argues that Oprah is not a naive figure. She has conducted major interviews for decades. She knows when to ask a follow-up. She knows how to challenge an answer. She knows the difference between a subject being vague by accident and a subject being vague because vagueness helps them. That is why, in this critical reading, Oprah's failure to push back was not just a mistake. It was part of the design. The interview was structured to help Harry and Meghan tell the story they wanted to tell. It allowed them to make serious allegations while preserving enough ambiguity to protect themselves from direct accountability. The win-win line strengthens that interpretation. Oprah did not say she wanted the interview to be a win for truth, a win for the public, or a win for accountability. She said she wanted it to be a win for them and for her. That is a very different mindset. It suggests she understood the interview as a shared media event.
It's right over there. I would get stopped by somebody else. And I ended up turning around and going back home. And I thought, well, how foolish of me to think I could go to Marshall Fields on a Saturday and not get stopped. And so that's the way I started approaching it. Like, if you don't want to be bothered, stay home. If you want to keep your privacy, then don't go out. If you want to go to a restaurant and you want to have, you're having out to dinner with Stedman and Stedman was like, why people are coming up all the time, then let's stay home and eat. And so that has been my approach.
Not a courtroom of facts. The Sussexes would get sympathy, attention, and a chance to frame their exit from royal life. Oprah would get a historic global television moment. The royal family, meanwhile, was not in the room, had no ability to respond in real time, and would have to absorb the impact afterward. The privacy section of Oprah's recent comments is just as revealing. She told a story about living above Marshall Fields in Chicago and once wanting to go downstairs to get a free Clinique gift bag. She remembered being stopped repeatedly by people who recognized her until she eventually gave up and went home. Her conclusion was simple. If you want privacy, stay home. If you go out as a famous person, people may approach you. If you want dinner without interruption, you may need to eat at home. Oprah presented this as her own way of understanding fame. She acknowledged that royalty and movie stardom can be different, but the underlying message was clear. A public life comes with trade-off. That observation lands directly on Harry and Meghan's central contradiction. They have repeatedly argued that they want privacy, safety, and control over their lives. At the same time, they have built a public brand around interviews, documentaries, podcasts, books, speeches, red carpets, lifestyle ventures, and carefully timed photographs or leaks. They do not want the press intrusion that comes with royal status, but they do want the prestige, curiosity, and commercial value that come from being royal. Oprah's story about fame quietly challenges that posture. She seems to be saying that celebrity has a cost, and that people who choose public relevance cannot expect total ordinary privacy. Critics interpret this as Oprah subtly distancing herself from the Sussex worldview. She may not be directly attacking them, she may not be ready to say she was misled, but by emphasizing that famous people need to make practical choices about privacy, she undermines the idea that Harry and Meghan are uniquely entitled to public attention without public inconvenience.
Was propaganda to be broadcast around the world, lies to be broadcast around the world in an attempt to bring down the British royal family. At the time, we called her out, but she was surrounded, Tash, by so much noise and so much wokery and so many people patting her on the back and saying, oh, well done, you've just changed the royal family forever. What she didn't realize is that she hadn't done her job. But I think, Tash, as Prince Harry and Meghan Markle have been exposed on such a grand scale over such a lengthy period now, Oprah has had to backtrack. And I appreciate that it was subtle, but I think she's embarrassed. I think she's deeply, deeply embarrassed, and she wants to change the legacy of this interview.
If you do not want to be seen, you stay private. If you go to restaurants, events, interviews, and global media platforms, you are participating in public life. You cannot call photographers when visibility helps and then condemn attention when it does not. The security issue connects to the same contradiction. Harry's public position has often been that he needs a specific level of protection because of who he is. His critics argue that the visible form of protection also functions as a status symbol. Motorcades, official escorts, armed officers, royal residences, and controlled movement all say royal to the watching public. They do not merely protect the body, they protect the image. If Harry is quietly driven in a private vehicle without spectacle, he may still be safe, but he does not look like a working royal. For a couple trying to increase their royal relevance after years of commercial disappointment, that visible symbolism matters. That is why the renewed talk of Harry wanting to rebuild ties with his family is viewed skeptically by many commentators. The Sussexes know they will not be allowed back as full working royals. The late Queen Elizabeth made the no half in, half out position clear, but they may still benefit from being seen close to the institution. A meeting with King Charles, a family photograph, a stay in a royal residence, a public visit with official security, or even friendly coverage about reconciliation can increase their market value. It can make them seem royal again without requiring them to return to the discipline of royal service. This is the context in which critics see Oprah's comments as part of a larger shift. High-profile people who once supported the Sussexes may now be reassessing what they attach themselves to. Names such as Tyler Perry, Gayle King, George Clooney, and others have all been connected in different ways to the Sussex support network or public commentary around them. At the height of the post-Oprah moment, backing Meghan was culturally fashionable in certain circles. It signaled sympathy, progressiveness, and alignment with a story about a woman mistreated by a powerful institution. But as the years pass, supporters have to ask whether they were given the whole truth.
Don't worry. You know, this is a win-win. That's a very different thing. That's PR. So she's admitted that she wasn't doing any type of journalistic investigation. She was doing PR.
I'm going to guide you.
Yeah.
That's exactly what she's saying there. It's going to be a win-win. Don't you worry. You just say the stuff and I'll help lead you. You know, that's why she didn't ask any of the questions. She knew exactly what she was doing in that. Oprah is not a stupid woman. It was designed to be that way. That's why she didn't push back on any of the questions. That's why when they said there was a member of the royal family that was racist, and they turned around and said, oh, we're not going to say who it is, because they knew that put a blanket accusation over every member of the royal family. Oprah should have said, is it one person?
The so-called receipts promised by Meghan's defenders have also become part of the criticism. For years, sympathetic voices suggested that Meghan had evidence to prove her version of events. Yet critics argue that the strongest documented evidence in the public domain has often gone the other way. The Finding Freedom Court revelations, the Jason Knauf emails, inconsistencies around cooperation with authors, shifting accounts of the royal racism claim, and the palace bullying allegations that remain part of the broader narrative, even though the full report has not been published. Whether one accepts every criticism or not, the point is that the Sussexes have not produced the simple, undeniable proof many supporters implied existed. This is where Oprah's position becomes delicate. If she fully turns on Harry and Meghan, she risks admitting that one of the biggest interviews of her career was built on weak foundations. If she continues defending the interview without qualification, she risks looking increasingly out of touch as more viewers re-examine it. If Meghan and Harry's marriage ever collapses, Oprah may also be positioned as someone who would want the first major interview. That possibility, raised by commentators in the source material, may explain why Oprah appears careful. She gives a few hints, she distances herself slightly, she critiques the logic of privacy. But she does not burn the bridge completely. The same logic applies to media platforms more broadly. Harry and Meghan remain valuable because they generate attention even when the attention is negative. A divorce interview, a memoir sequel, a reconciliation special, a Meghan My Story project, or a Harry Return to Britain documentary would all attract viewers. The media industry does not always care whether a figure is admired or disliked. It cares whether people watch, click, argue, and share. That is why the Sussex story keeps going. It is not only about truth, it is about content. But content has a shelf life unless it is refreshed by access. That is why royal proximity is so important. Without new contact with King Charles, without new information about William, without new photographs of Archie and Lilibet, without new palace tension, the Sussex brand risks becoming repetitive. The same grievances can only be sold so many times. A return narrative, even a partial one, gives the story new energy. It lets the media talk about healing, family, regrets, grandchildren, security, and whether Meghan might come back to Britain. It also allows Harry and Meghan to look relevant to the monarchy again, which is far more commercially useful than simply being former royals in California. That is why the timing of Oprah's renewed comments is so interesting. She is not revisiting a settled triumph. She is revisiting a piece of media whose meaning has changed. In 2021, many viewers were still inside the emotional shock of Megxit. Harry and Meghan had left Britain, the pandemic had changed public life, and the language of mental health, institutional cruelty, and racial injustice carried enormous cultural power.
It's not the interview with Michael Jackson anymore. It's this interview. It's not the you got a car anymore. It's this interview. And I think as the years go on, Tash, she's not going to be able to avoid it. And she probably will get to the point where she has to admit that, yes, I was misled. Yes, I trusted these people and I believed them because they were my friends. And yes, I should have done more. Because I think we're heading to that point. I think she's deeply mortified about it. And I think when she saw that, I could sense that she was uncomfortable. It was really interesting, wasn't it? Oh, I haven't done that since. That's not someone who's watching back a piece of work, Tash, that they're proud of. And also, it's almost like she was trying to suggest, well, I wasn't really in my right.
The interview arrived like a verdict before the evidence had been tested. Years later, the conditions are different. The public has seen the Netflix series, the memoir, the court documents, the commercial deals, the changing explanations, and the repeated attempts to stay connected to royal status. What once sounded like a final break from a painful institution now looks to critics like the beginning of a long campaign to monetize proximity to that same institution. This is also why the interview's timing around Prince Philip remains part of the anger. The Duke of Edinburgh was gravely ill, and the royal family was already under emotional strain. The Sussexes and Oprah pressed ahead with a broadcast that placed the monarchy under global accusation at one of its most vulnerable moments. Supporters might argue that Harry and Meghan had a right to tell their story and that family illness should not silence them. Critics answer that timing reveals judgment. If the goal was truth and healing, the way the interview was structured and broadcast did not feel healing, it felt explosive. It created maximum pressure, maximum sympathy, and maximum damage, while the palace had little room to respond without looking cruel. The mental health claim also deserved more careful handling. Meghan spoke movingly about suffering and feeling unsupported, and any such claim should be treated seriously. But serious treatment does not mean abandoning scrutiny. A responsible interviewer could have asked who was approached, what support was requested, what the palace's human resources structure could or could not provide, whether medical help was available through private means, and how those details fit with the couple's own resources and status. Instead, the claim was allowed to sit as a broad indictment of the institution. The audience was invited to feel the pain, but not given enough information to understand the mechanisms. That is a pattern throughout the interview. Powerful emotional material, insufficient factual architecture. The monarchy's response was restrained because restraint is often its only weapon. The palace could not go point by point without dragging private family matters even further into the open.
Harry and Meghan have lost all of their value. If Meghan and Harry divorce, there is going to be warfare between the couple briefing against each other. And there's going to be more things that come out where it's going to be Oprah's going to get called into it, because nothing will ever make sense with this couple, no matter what the story is. They've got 3 to 5 different versions of it. They never say the same thing, even between them in the same room. And
it could not accuse Harry and Meghan directly of misleading the public without creating a war that would dominate for months. So it answered with controlled language and let time do some of the work. Time has indeed changed the conversation. The public has had years to compare statements, watch behavior, and decide whether the Sussexes wanted peace or a platform. Oprah's discomfort now suggests that even people who helped create the original spectacle understand that time has not been kind to it. The contrast with Prince George's 13th birthday could not be sharper. After a long discussion about Oprah, Harry, Meghan, privacy, and media manipulation, the source material shifts to the new photograph and video released by the Prince and Princess of Wales to mark George becoming a teenager. Kensington Palace offered a simple image and a short video. George looked relaxed, informal, and happy. The video gave the public a glimpse of his personality without turning him into content. There was warmth, but there was restraint. That is the Wales strategy in miniature. William and Catherine have learned how to share enough of their children to build public affection while still preserving childhood. The public knows small details about George. He enjoys sport. He has shown an interest in scuba diving. He likes cricket. He has been associated with music tastes such as Led Zeppelin and AC/DC. He plays guitar. He is competitive, and he and Princess Charlotte have spoken about practicing tennis. These details have emerged gradually through brief comments, public moments, and carefully controlled appearances. They do not feel like exploitation because they are not constant. They create a portrait, not a reality show. That balance is difficult because the Wales children are not ordinary private citizens. George is the future king. Charlotte may one day hold a major supporting role, possibly even becoming Princess Royal if the circumstances allow. Louis, as the youngest, will have more room to define his own path, but he is still part of the central royal family. The public has a legitimate interest in them because the monarchy depends on continuity and public support. At the same time, children should not have to carry the emotional hunger of a media age that wants constant access.
Increasingly embarrassed, especially, by the way, when you see in America the ongoing cachet of the British royal family, for example, looking at Taylor Swift's and relationship with Prince William and Catherine, and the fact that William appeared on the New Heights podcast. I think I'm not saying they're doing this altruistically. I think they're all doing it from a place of, oh God, we backed the wrong team.
Wrong horse. Oh yeah, completely. I mean, the people that were, really out there defending poor little Meghan. You've got George Clooney. You've got, I think her name was Javina. She was someone, she was in a couple of things like True Blood and that. She was very vocal. She was on with Gayle King talking about the receipts that nobody has still to this day, 6-7 years later, has seen a single receipt. We've seen plenty of receipts.
William and Catherine are trying to walk that narrow path, public enough to maintain connection, private enough to preserve normality. According to Taz, this is where William and Catherine deserve real credit. They are raising children inside a spotlight without making the spotlight the center of the children's lives. The public sees birthday photographs, balcony appearances, major national events, and occasional family moments. Then the children disappear back into school, sport, family, and private life. That rhythm teaches the public to accept boundaries. It also gives the children a chance to grow into themselves before their roles harden around them. This is the opposite of the Sussex contradiction. Harry and Meghan often speak about privacy, yet their children remain central to their royal identity. Archie and Lilibet's titles matter to the brand. Occasional images and references create enormous attention. Their names appear in discussions about security, reconciliation, family access, and royal legitimacy. Harry wrote about the pain of being royal and the trauma of life inside the system, yet he and Meghan chose to use prince and princess titles for their children. Critics ask the obvious question: if royal status was so damaging, why preserve it so carefully for the next generation? Other royal children show that another model is possible. Lady Louise Windsor and James, Earl of Wessex, grew up with royal connections, but without being placed under the same level of public pressure. Princess Anne also famously declined royal titles for Peter Phillips and Zara Tindall, giving them more freedom from the start. The point is not that every royal child has the same circumstances. George, Charlotte, and Louis are closer to the throne, so their visibility will always be different. But the broader lesson remains. Children can be connected to royalty without being turned into emotional props or commercial symbols. The future of the monarchy may depend heavily on whether the Wales model succeeds. Polls will always fluctuate, and some newspapers will continue publishing surveys about royal popularity. Charles and Camilla still carry historical baggage.
But we are still yet to this day to see a single receipt that any member of the royal family did anything wrong to either one of them, And as for Harry, I mean, Oprah's got as much hope as dialing it back as Harry does. And for Harry, still trying to say, we never said the family was racist. They literally went and collected a Kennedy Award for fighting racism inside the royal family,
Especially for people who never forgave the breakdown of Charles and Diana's marriage. But William and Catherine have a different kind of public credibility. They represent continuity after chaos. Catherine's illness and dignified return to public life have strengthened sympathy. William's focus on his children and on measured public duty gives the impression of a future monarchy that understands restraint. When they eventually come to the throne, they may be more popular than the current king and queen because they feel like the cleaner next chapter. That is why the George video matters beyond a birthday. It shows the public the future without overexposing it. It says, here is the boy who will one day be king, but here is also a child playing, smiling, and growing up inside a loving family. It reassures people that the monarchy has another generation coming. It also contrasts with the emotional disorder around Harry. One side is building future legitimacy carefully, inch by inch. The other side is still litigating the past through interviews, media alliances, and claims of victimhood.
They literally went and collected a Kennedy Award for fighting racism inside the royal family. You know, it's
go
madness.
figure.
It's gaslighting is out of control when it comes to those two.
Go figure. Tash, a palate cleanse.
Oprah's problem is that she helped create one of the biggest chapters of that disorder. The 2021 interview did not simply report the Sussex rupture, it intensified it. It shaped public perception around the world. It forced the royal family into a defensive posture. It gave Harry and Meghan a powerful victim narrative at precisely the moment they were building a post-royal media career. It left the monarchy to respond with a single controlled phrase, while the emotional content of the interview spread across every major media market. Oprah may now want to suggest she was simply asking clarifying questions, but the record shows that the most important clarifications were missing. If Oprah wants to repair the legacy of that interview, subtle comments will not be enough. She would need to acknowledge that the format failed the public. She would need to say that serious allegations deserved serious follow-up. She would need to explain why the title and security claims were not fact-checked more rigorously. She would need to address why Harry and Meghan's different versions of the skin color conversation were not challenged. She would need to admit that friendship, proximity, and the desire for a television moment can compromise the work of truth-seeking. That would be difficult, but it would be honest. The larger lesson is about media power. A polished interview can change history, even if it is incomplete. A famous interviewer can make a claim feel credible simply by treating it as credible. Emotional television can bypass the audience's demand for evidence because it feels intimate. That is what happened in 2021. Many viewers believed they were watching truth finally spoken. Others believed they were watching a carefully managed attack. Years later, as the details are revisited, the second interpretation has gained strength among critics. Oprah's discomfort suggests she knows the interview no longer sits safely in the first category. The Sussexes now face a similar reckoning. They cannot keep relying on the emotional shock of leaving the royal family. They cannot keep presenting themselves as silenced while speaking constantly. They cannot keep demanding privacy while selling access.
New videos of George that we've seen today, Tash.
I mean, I love them. I love the way Catherine and William do share a lot with their children, but they still keep them completely private. They don't expose their children. They don't use their children in any way. You know, for example, with Prince George, we know lots of things about Prince George. We know he likes scuba diving. We know he likes cricket. We know that he likes Led Zeppelin and AC/DC, and he plays the guitar. You know, he's into sports. He's competitive. He plays tennis at the...
They cannot keep suggesting they were mistreated without producing the evidence their supporters once promised. They cannot keep saying they never accused the family of racism while accepting praise for challenging alleged racism inside the institution. At some point, a brand built on grievance either proves its case or becomes exhausting. For the royal family, the task is to avoid being dragged back into the Sussex media cycle every time Harry and Meghan need relevance. The Waleses show one way forward: controlled access, minimal drama, careful family images, and a long-term focus on the next generation. King Charles may still be vulnerable to the emotional pull of reconciliation, especially with illness and grandchildren involved. But William and Catherine appear much more focused on boundaries. They understand that the monarchy cannot survive as a content source for people who left royal duty but still want royal value. So Oprah's latest comments matter because they reveal a shift. The people who once helped Harry and Meghan tell their story are beginning to protect their own reputations. The interviewer who once gave them one of the biggest platforms in the world now seems uncomfortable explaining how that platform was used. The celebrity world that once embraced the Sussex narrative may be asking whether it backed the wrong story. And the public, after years of contradictions, is far less willing to accept every emotional claim at face value. In the end, the Oprah interview remains a turning point, but perhaps not the triumph its participants imagined. It exposed pain, yes, but it also exposed the weakness of celebrity journalism when it refuses to challenge friends. It gave Harry and Meghan a global platform, but it also locked them into a story they have struggled to sustain consistently. It damaged the royal family, but it also revealed the importance of restraint, which is why William and Catherine now look stronger. By contrast, Oprah wanted a win-win. What she created was a long reckoning. And that reckoning is not finished yet.
And he might also then decide, because he doesn't have to, that he might have, a different role carved out for him that he will do himself. But these are all personality things that we've learned about the children without the children being exposed personally. We've learnt tiny little details about them, and it helps the public to have affection for them. And without the public support for the monarchy, we won't have a monarchy. But as it stands, despite the polls that some of these newspapers are obsessed with running week on week on week, they are still more popular than they are unpopular. And I do think, and I hate to admit this, but I do think when Catherine and William